In a galaxy where touching her meant death, one human broke the law. Dramatic pause. Deep in an alien prison, they called her the Cursed One, a girl who carried the pain of empires in her bones. No one dared reach out. Until Kale, a broken war medic, did the unthinkable. Sound of energy crackling when his fingers brushed her skin. Sudden silence. Nothing happened. But the Empire doesn't forgive. Now, as sirens scream and stars burn, they're running through the belly of a dying ship, bound by blood and hunted by an emperor who'd rather erase the stars than let them escape. Building percussion. Their only hope? A bond that shouldn't exist, and a truth that could shatter the galaxy. If you are new here, then please subscribe this channel and show thumbs up by liking the video. Now let's move to this wonderful story. The cell was a tomb of shadows buried deep under the iron towers of the Vorath Empire, where the air smelled of rust and old fear. In the corner, a girl sat motionless, her silver-scarred wrists resting on bent knees. The guards called her the Hollow One, a creature of whispers and dread. A sign above her cell glowed crimson with words that made even the cruelest prisoners flinch. Touch her and perish. No one ever did not until the night they threw Kale Vorsis into the neighboring cell. Unlike the others, he didn't cower or pray. He just watched her with dark eyes that recognized something deeper than fear. He'd seen that look before in war, zones and dying soldiers and people who'd given up on hope. Days passed in silence until one night when the prison's hum was the only sound. "Your name's Lyra, isn't it?" he murmured. The girl flinched. No one had spoken her name in years. She didn't answer, but Kale kept talking, his voice low and steady. He told her of human skies, of oceans that didn't sting like the Empire's acid rains, of fireflies that lit up forests like fallen stars. Lyra didn't move, but her fingers curled slightly into her palms. Then came Dravik the Warden, a zealot who believed Lyra's curse kept the Empire strong. When he raised his shock staff to punish her for stealing rations, Kale moved against every law he reached through the crackling energy. Bars and grabbed Lyra's wrist. The prison held its breath. The expected scream, the death none came. Lyra's eyes widened. Kale's hand was warm. Alive. Dravik snarled. Impossible. The alarms blared, and in that chaos, Lyra did the unthinkable. She held on. The alarms wailed like dying beasts as Kale dragged Lyra through the prison's underbelly, where the walls wept condensation and the air tasted of burnt metal. Her thin fingers trembled in his grip, but she didn't pull away behind them. The clatter of armored boots grew louder. Dravik's voice sliced through the chaos. "Find them, the girl dies today, the human burns." Kyle knew the stories, they said. Lyra's touch could kill that. Her skin carried a plague that had wiped out whole outposts, but her hand in his was just cold and small, no different than any other survivors he'd pulled from war zones. They rounded a corner into an ancient maintenance shaft where rusted pipes groaned underfoot. Suddenly, Lyra yanked him sideways into a crevice barely wider than their shoulders, pressed close. She breathed, her voice dusty from disuse. They stood chest to chest as searchlights swept past her. Breath hitched when a guard paused inches away. But the moment passed, the hunt moved on. Lyra pointed downward where a grate led to the prison's forgotten foundations beneath layers of dust and cobwebs. They found a hatch marked with faded symbols. Kale pried it open, revealing a steep drop into darkness. Lyra hesitated, her eyes reflecting. "Dim light, you don't have to follow me," he said. But she shook her head. "If I stay, I die. If I go, I die. But at least I choose how the fall was longer than expected." They landed in a cavern where the walls pulsed with bioluminescent fungus. The space opened into a derelict hangar housing a single ship. Its hull sleek but pocked with age, the design was unlike anything Kale had seen. All smooth curves and organic lines, as if grown rather than built. Lyra gasped, her fingers brushing a crest on. It sighed, "This is a mourner's vessel. My people built them to carry the dead home." Kale approached the sealed ramp, but a console flashed demanding authorization. Lyra pressed her palm against it. "Nothing happened. It needs two," she whispered. "Two souls, bound by blood." Kale didn't hesitate. He drew his knife across his palm and offered it to her. She matched the gesture. Their bleeding hands clasped together as the console drank their mingled blood. The ship awoke with a shuddering groan. The ramp lowered, revealing an interior lined with living tissue that pulsed like a heartbeat as they boarded the walls, reacted to their presence glowing softly where they passed. Lyra collapsed into a pilot's chair, her face ashen. "The bond is temporary," she panted. "But it shows me things, your memories, the war, the patience you couldn't save." Kyle stiffened. Those were private, but before he could speak, the hangar doors exploded inward. Dravik stood silhouetted in the smoke, flanked by soldiers in full combat rigs. "You think a relic will save you?" He spat the girl as a weapon meant to be controlled. Lyra's voice was quiet but clear. "I was never a weapon. I was a shield. The Empire made me absorb pain so others wouldn't feel it." Kale understood now why the outposts had died. They'd overloaded her with suffering until it leaked out like radiation. Dravik raised his weapon, but the ship's systems reacted faster. Tendrils of living metal shot from the walls, impaling 2 soldiers, the rest scattered. As the hangar trembled, Kale hauled Lyra to the cockpit where the controls responded to her touch. The ship lifted just as the ceiling began to collapse. Dravik's final scream was cut short by falling debris as they burst into the open sky. Lyra's hands flew across the console, but her movements grew sluggish. "The bond is fading," she warned already. The ship's systems were rejecting her touch. Kale grabbed her wrist. "No, it's not." He pressed their still bleeding palms together, and suddenly the ship sang to life, its engines roaring as it streaked toward the stars below them. The prison burned, and for the first time in years, Lyra smiled. The ship barely made it to the Imperial core before its ancient systems failed, limping into orbit around the gleaming spires of the Vorath homeworld, where automated drones immediately swarmed them. Latching onto the hull with magnetic claws as Lyra slumped against the viewport, whispering, "They'll make an example of us," while Kale watched the docking procedures with a soldier's calm, his fingers tapping in irregular rhythm against his thigh as the airlock hissed open to reveal a dozen armed guards in ceremonial armor, who dragged them through sterile white corridors to a chamber that took Kale's breath away. Not for its grandeur, but for its cruelty. A circular courtroom suspended in vacuum behind transparent walls with the swirling galaxy visible on all sides. The judge's podium floating above them as hundreds of alien faces watched through glowing screens across known space. The air thick, with the scent of ozone and something sharper like burning metal, as they were shoved onto a platform that hummed with restraining fields. Lyra's knees hit the metal with a hollow thud, while Kyle remained standing until a shock pulse forced him down beside her. The judge's voice boomed through hidden speakers, listing their crimes: theft of Imperial property, sabotage, heresy against the divine order. Each word making Lyra shrink smaller until Kale leaned into her shoulder, whispering, "They're scared, that's why this spectacle exists." Which was when the Emperor himself appeared as a holographic projection 20 feet tall. His elongated face twisted in disgust as he offered Kale a choice: denounce the blood oath, testify that Lyra bewitched him, and walk free with full honors as the human who exposed the last of the cursed ones. The courtroom held its breath as Kale rose slowly to his feet, the restraint fields crackling against his skin, while he turned not to the Emperor, but to the countless viewers watching across star systems and said, "You all know what she really is." His voice raw but clear, not a curse but a sponge for suffering, made to carry what your rulers couldn't bear. Lyra made a small wounded noise as the Emperor's hologram flickered, but Kale continued, "Ask yourselves why they locked her away instead of killing her if she's so dangerous." The platform beneath them began to glow as punishment protocols activated, but Lyra suddenly stood, her silver scars blazing with unexpected light as the remnants of their blood bond flared back to life. Her voice amplified through some ancient technology in the ship's bond that still lingered in their veins. "Let me show you the truth," she said softly, and then the courtroom vanished, replaced by Lyra's memories flooding into every watching mind. Centuries of Imperial atrocities carefully filtered through her body, entire planets' worth of pain absorbed until she screamed, children torn from parents, cultures erased, all while the Emperor's court feasted in halls of gold. The projection wavered as viewers across the galaxy gasped under the weight of shared memory. Guards dropped their weapons, clutching their heads as the truth resonated through them. Somewhere in the depths of the Imperial fleet, a ship changed course, then another. their transmitters broadcasting the trial to unauthorized channels as Lyra fell to her knees, the effort draining her last strength while Kale caught her shouting over the growing chaos. "You wanted a show? Here's your ending." Just as the far wall exploded inward, not from weapons fire but from the derelict mourner's ship, which had somehow followed them, its living tendrils smashing through the reinforced glass, as atmosphere rushed out into the void. Emergency field snapped into place, but not before the ancient vessel wrapped itself around the platform where Kale and Lyra stood, its organic walls forming a protective cocoon as the Emperor's enraged hologram flickered out. Outside the courtroom, the first rebel ships blinked into existence. Not an armada, but scattered vessels of dozens of species, some barely spaceworthy, but all broadcasting the same message across every frequency: "We see the truth now." While the Imperial fleet hesitated, their loyalty cracking under the weight of what they'd witnessed. Inside the dying ship's embrace, Kale pressed his forehead to Lyra's as the bond between them flared one final time. Not with pain, but with something brighter, something that made the very stars outside the broken courtroom seem to burn a little fiercer in the endless dark. The derelict ship's dying pulse thrummed through the cocoon-like chamber where Kale cradled Lyra's limp form, her silver scars now dark as extinguished stars, while outside the fractured courtroom, the Emperor's wrath manifested in the shuddering groan of planetary defense cannons powering up, their massive barrels swiveling to target both the rebel ships and the broken station itself in a grotesque final solution. Better to erase everything than let the truth spread. Yet as the weapons charged, a curious thing happened. The mourner vessel's organic walls began dissolving into luminous particles that swirled around Kale and Lyra like a protective storm. The last gift of a ship that remembered older and kinder laws than the Empire's cruelty. Through their fading blood bond, Kale felt Lyra's consciousness flicker as she reached for the incoming barrage, not to stop it, but to embrace it, her body trembling with the awful understanding that this was what she'd been made for. This final absorption that would shatter her completely but save thousands. Yet when she tried to pull away to face death alone, Kale's arms locked around her with stubborn strength, whispering, "Not this time," as he pressed their clasped hands against the ship's dissolving core. In that instant, three things happened simultaneously. The defense cannons fired their apocalyptic beams. The rebel ships launched every remaining missile in desperate defiance, and the glowing particles surrounding our protagonist suddenly crystallized into a perfect sphere that drank the incoming destruction, like parched earth swallowing rain. The bond between human and cursed one, flaring so bright it burned through every Imperial screen still broadcasting across the galaxy, showing billions the exact moment when absorbed energy transformed not into destruction, but into something entirely new. The sphere blossoming outward in intricate fractal patterns that rewrote the weapon's programming mid-flight, turning what should have been annihilation into a wave of light that washed over the Imperial fleet, disabling weapons but leaving crews unharmed. And when the glare finally faded, Kale stood alone in the wreckage of the courtroom, holding nothing but wisps of silver mist that curled around his fingers like reluctant ghosts. The station around him groaning as gravity systems failed and the cold of space began creeping through the shattered viewports. Yet instead of despair, a strange calm settled over him as he noticed the rebel ships moving to intercept fleeing Imperial shuttles, not with weapons, but with rescue beams, and further out the glimmer of countless new vessels emerging from jump points. Civilian ships, medical frigates, even former Imperial patrol boats, all broadcasting the same simple message: "We're coming to help." While drifting through this chaos like a leaf on a river current, Kale finally saw her, or rather the impression of her, Lyra's form flickering at the edges of reality as the energy she'd absorbed sought equilibrium, her voice echoing not just in his mind, but through every functioning speaker in the system, whispering, "The pain doesn't have to be wasted." As her fading presence touched the Imperial flagship's controls, overriding the doomsday protocols and rerouting power to life support and engines, her essence dispersing further with each act of reparation, until all that remained was a single glowing thread connecting her dissolving consciousness to Kale's outstretched hand. And in that last moment before the thread snapped, he poured every memory of human resilience through their bond. Children laughing after storms, soldiers laying down arms to carry wounded enemies, the quiet courage of ordinary people choosing kindness in unkind worlds. And whether it was enough, neither could say, but the galaxy would remember the way the stars themselves seemed to pulse in time with that final shared heartbeat. Before the light faded completely, leaving Kyle standing amidst the ruins of tyranny, holding nothing but the echoes of a sacrifice that would ripple across generations. And as rescue teams finally breached the courtroom, they found him smiling through tears, watching the first sunrise. In centuries break over the Vorath homeworld's darkened cities, its golden light catching on the drifting particles that some would later swear formed the shape of two hands, clasped together against the dawn before scattering like embers on a cosmic wind, carrying with them the last spark of something that no empire could ever truly extinguish.